Insurance fraud in the UK has hit epidemic levels. It's costing us over £1 billion every year. That's almost £3.5 million every day. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injuries, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year, it's adding over £50 to your insurance bill. But insurers are fighting back, exposing just under 15 fake claims every hour, armed with covert surveillance systems.
That's a subject out the vehicle.
Sophisticated data analysis techniques, and a number of highly skilled police units. They're catching the criminals red-handed.
Just don't lie to us.
All those con men, scammers and cheats on the fiddle are now caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Today, the City of London Police's Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department pays a visit to a suspected fraudster.
He wasn't expecting the knock. He wasn't expecting anyone, I don't think, to catch up with what he'd been up to.
A brazen bus claim is busted.
She may as well have been sitting on the bonnet of the car with her feet up, reading the newspaper, wearing a T-shirt saying, "I'm not in my car."
And a claimant is their own worst enemy.
But if those rings have been lost, why would your wife be wearing them yesterday?
Well, I don't know.
Everyone who works in insurance should know what a hard line the industry takes against fraud, from junior claims handlers up to high-flying city brokers like Jay Solder. Solder's generous salary meant he frequently jetted off on luxury holidays, but one sunshine break ended up under a black cloud, and he had to make a claim.
He lost his jacket whilst on a flight coming back from a European destination. Contained within his jacket was a pen, mobile phone, wallet and some cash.
Matthew Crawford Thomas is the fraud manager at Intana, a company that's a claims management specialist, handling claims on behalf of insurers.
Claim Mr. Solder submitted to us in May 2013 was in the region of between £4,000 and £4,500. On the basis of it, the claim looked 100% genuine.
But Solder's travel claim was the start of a journey that would lead all the way to court.
As soon as I opened up the documents for Mr. Solder's claim, alarm bells started to ring. I recognised the name Jay and the occupation insurance broker. To have that first name and that occupation the same, to me, seemed a bit strange.
Matthew soon discovered it was no mere coincidence.
After a bit more digging, I'd actually found out that he submitted a claim to us in January of the same year, this time under the name Jay Webb.
But Jay Solder hadn't stopped at a fake name.
I ran the date of birth through our system and found a match at a completely different address for the same first name, different surname, same bank account, same occupation. For me, the two claims were from exactly the same person.
Not only was there a close match on the personal details, there were other similarities too.
Most of the items that he claimed for in January 2013 and in May 2013 were exactly the same items. It was unfortunate for Mr. Solder. He thought he was dealing with two different companies. However, both claims landed on my desk, albeit 4 months apart.
Convinced that there had never been a loss and that the whole thing was fabricated, Matthew liaised with IFED, the City of London Police's Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, and they launched an investigation headed up by DC Aman Taylor.
One of the main inquiries I did was to contact the airlines to find out if he actually flew. And it transpired that on one of the flights, he hadn't flown. He'd bought the cheapest ticket he could find from Stansted to France and used the boarding pass as proof of him flying.
With the evidence building, Solder's holiday scam was about to be permanently grounded.
By now, we were certain that there was something wasn't right and that we needed to go around and speak with Mr. Solder officially.
We rocked up to the house at 7:30 in the morning and began to give the IFED knock on the door.
Eventually, Solder opened the door and let the officers into his property.
From the City of London Police Insurance Fraud Team.
Right.
I'm here today to speak to you regarding a claim that you've made.
Right.
So I can come in.
Yeah.
I've got my colleagues here with me.
First thing we do in that circumstance is to arrest him. You're under arrest on suspicion of fraud by false representation relating to the claim that's been made, alright?
Okay.
I've got to caution you, actually, you don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence. If you don't want to mention any questions, something too later on in court, anything you do so may be given in evidence. When Jay Solder was placed under arrest, he was visibly shaken. So he wasn't expecting the knock. He wasn't expecting anyone, I don't think, to catch up with what he'd been up to. I can see you're upset about it, but unfortunately this is the way it's going to have to be dealt with today.
Okay.
Alright. And then we went about our business searching to try and find the items that he'd claimed for, especially given the fact that we knew on one of the travel claims he hadn't even travelled.
If the evidence they found was related to the claims, it would prove vital.
Good. No, nothing. We like to be thorough on IFED. Bathroom's clear.
They're the sunglasses which are, or they're the same make and model of the sunglasses that have been reported stolen as well. So we'll seize them.
Lo and behold, items that Mr. Solder had claimed for were located at the property. See that?
And that's going to be the camera then.
There's one item in particular which was a Sony camera, which featured in a lot of the claims, along with a number of other items which were matched or similar items to ones that have been reported stolen.
Still to come, the raid continues.
I'll have to get this down. I think this is a bag of money.
And more, much more, comes to light.
£6,000 cash is not something you usually come across in a normal house search.
And words fail when CCTV reveals a false claim.
There aren't enough syllables in the word incredulous to describe how I actually felt when I looked at this. I just wanted to scream at the screen saying, "She's not in the car!"
More and more, the insurance industry is relying on technology to detect fraud, from large-scale cons right down to minor household claims. What these scammers all have in common is that they underestimate the sophisticated resources available.
Good afternoon, you're speaking to Claire at ICOG. How can I help?
My wife took her rings off. I just can't find them anywhere.
On the surface, this claimant seemed to be making a fairly routine household insurance claim.
It was Sunday. We was out doing the garden, and my wife took her rings off, the 3 rings what she had on her finger. Then we went out and did the garden. After a few hours, and we realised that the rings had gone. I've had the Hoover out, I've had the bins. I didn't know if I'd scooped them up or the cat knocked them off the side. I've looked under the units. I just can't find them anywhere.
But the claimant had dug a hole for himself with the shady gardening story.
It was quite unbelievable that it's just an unexplained loss. The rings have just vanished from the property. Whilst the back door had been open, their eyesight had been in the property at all times. There was just no way these rings could just have disappeared from this kitchen.
Claire Mitten, from specialist claims consultants ICOG, worked on the case. The insurance company wanted Claire to use her expertise to root out any inconsistencies in the claimant's version of events.
We asked him to forward us any proof of ownership he might have, so in the form of a receipt, a valuation, as well as a photograph. He submitted a photograph of his wife wearing the rings, but was unable to provide us with any receipts or valuations.
But rather than burying any suspicions, the photo planted further seeds of doubt.
When we received the photograph, to the untrained eye, it would look like a very normal photograph. It was a lady on her sofa with her arm around the dog, cuddling the dog. However, to us as experts in the industry, we were able to tell that this photograph looked quite staged. The prominence of the photograph was on the ring, and that it was quite close up with regards to what we were looking at. Just didn't feel quite right.
But that wasn't all. Further technological analysis of the photo revealed evidence that proved beyond doubt that it was a totally false claim.
We analysed the photograph and the data that was held within the photograph and established that the photograph had actually been taken the evening before. The incident date had actually been the previous week, so this quite clearly led to the fact that he still had the rings in his possession.
It was time to raise the concerns with the claimant. Claire rang him and gave him the opportunity to come clean.
When we investigated the metadata that was embedded into the photograph, what do you think we might have found?
No idea.
With the claimant pleading ignorance, Claire knew it was time to confront him about the dates, but it didn't go the way she expected.
So So when was this actual photograph taken? Do you know?
Yeah, I put that one yesterday.
So you have taken that photograph yesterday?
The one that I sent one yesterday.
Yesterday? I'm no advanced conversation management expert, but he just dropped himself in it. If he'd lost the rings when he said, he couldn't possibly have taken a photo of them yesterday.
The information that we have found is quite right, that photograph has actually been taken yesterday.
Yeah.
This did surprise me. I wasn't expecting this result. I was expecting him to explain that they were taken quite a long time ago. I actually don't think he realised what he had told me. Could you just be honest?
Yeah.
Why did you make this claim?
Why? Because they've generally been lost.
Come on, pal, you're fooling no one.
I need you to be honest with me. Have you still got those rings?
No, I haven't, no.
So why did you send a photo taken yesterday at 5 to 7?
I can't say nothing, can I?
So are you telling me that you still have the rings?
No, I haven't still got the rings.
Yeah, but this clearly shows that you still have the rings. If this photo was taken last night, you still have those rings?
No.
He wasn't budging, but Claire's not one to back down.
But if those rings have been lost, why would your wife be wearing them yesterday?
But I don't know.
I then asked the insured for a final time that this was his chance to be honest with me and tell me what had happened to the rings. Is this a fraudulent claim that you're making?
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. To be fair, I found the ring. I found the ring in the bin.
Okay. Thank you ever so much for your honesty. You've done the right thing.
With the photo evidence and the confession, there could be only one outcome to the claim. It was declined.
We explained to him the insurance company has a zero tolerance to fraud, and we have recommended that the insured is placed on the fraud register, so it will make it very difficult for him in the future to get any further insurance policies.
Right from the start, the tale of lost jewellery had lacked the ring of truth. And by the end of the call, Claire had successfully weeded out the facts. Digital data from photographs was also instrumental in a case of wintry woe submitted to Allianz.
Britain's brutal winter remains with us.
In early 2014, Britain's notoriously unpredictable weather meant the country took a battering.
The UK was hit by a series of weather-related events, mini-storms, if you will, and thousands of policyholders were affected. Lives were affected, businesses were affected.
Given the situation, there was nothing immediately unusual about one particular weather-related claim.
The policyholder had suffered storm damage to the rendering on the wall outside his house. The damage was estimated to be in the region of £3,900 and £4,200.
Allianz started to process the claim and commissioned a surveyor's report. It was at this point that the storm cloud started to gather.
In his view, the damage was caused by wear and tear and over a period of time than actually being storm damage.
The foundations of this claim were starting to look shaky, and Allianz contacted the builder who had provided one of the estimates.
He also indicated that the damage was likely to be as a result of moisture over a period of time, as opposed to a single event such as a storm.
But could the policyholder simply have been mistaken about the cause of the damage?
The policyholder's occupation was a builder, and one would expect a builder to be able to differentiate from what is storm damage to what is wear and tear.
Unlikely then. Further investigation was called for, and they took another look at photos that had been supplied with the estimates.
The analysis of the photographs told us that the photos weren't in fact taken at the time alleged, but were taken 3.5 months earlier. And it was at this point that we thought actually we were dealing with a fraudulent claim.
Allianz's investigation cut through the bluster to expose a bitter truth.
The policyholder knew at the time of incepting the policy with Allianz Insurance that there was pre-existing damage, and he was simply waiting for the opportunity for a weather-related event to submit the claim.
When the storm struck, he saw his chance and attempted to claim an insurance payout. Challenged by Allianz about the photos, he refused to come clean, and the case was passed to IFED.
Some months later, we were contacted by IFED, who advised us they'd arrested the policyholder, he had admitted the fraud, and they'd given him a caution.
Although they'd avoided an undeserved payout, there was still a cost to bear.
What was really frustrating about this whole thing was that the policyholder submitted a claim at a time when there were thousands of policyholders in genuine need, and this diverted resources from Allianz, from other insurers, where we could have actually helped those people get back on their feet. This does prove that insurance fraud is not a victimless crime.
According to the Association of British Insurers, Whiplash is now costing motorists £2 billion a year. Aviva's bodily injuries unit, based in Bishopbriggs near Glasgow, includes experts that specialise in detecting personal injury fraud. If someone tries to fake or exaggerate an injury, they'll pull the plug. Richard Hiscox is Director of Casualty Claims. His team recently dealt with an injury caused by a road traffic collision.
So we got a claim from the third party to say he'd been involved in an accident with our customer, who was holding our customer at fault. The accident was two cars reversing in the early hours of the morning outside a nightclub. The claimant had alleged that as they were reversing, our customer had reversed into him, causing injury. He claimed that he had whiplash in his left shoulder of 12 months duration.
With such a lengthy period of injury, the value of the claim was substantial.
We put an estimate on this claim of just over £5,000, which is a mix of the compensation for the injuries and the legal costs.
But right from the start, there was something back to front about the claim. Aviva contacted their insured driver, and his version of what had happened was very different.
He was acquainted with the claimant, and they'd been reversing their cars at the same time. I don't quite know why they'd been doing that.
Me either.
Because the contact and the speed was very slight, they both agreed at the time that neither was going to do anything more about it.
But sometime later, the claimant did a U-turn on the agreement and put in a claim. He even attempted to back it up with CCTV he'd obtained.
Actually, what you see is there's two vehicles reversing at the same time. Our customer's in the white vehicle on the right-hand side. The claimant is in the other vehicle next to that, and they seem to reverse together, and right at the end there's some sort of collision. But clearly the CCTV shows there's no impact that's severe enough to cause injury.
Submitting the CCTV was a bold move, but one that ultimately backfired spectacularly.
This CCTV was provided by the claimant in support of their claim, but actually what it does is pretty much disprove it.
Aviva informed the claimant that they would not be paying. He refused to back away, and the case went to trial, where he couldn't even keep his story straight.
Originally he'd said that he had 12-month injury to his left shoulder. In court he said he had a 6-month injury to his right shoulder, and he had injury to his neck, which hadn't been mentioned before. So he changed his shoulder and added something else in and changed the duration, which clearly indicated he was fabricating much of his story.
The outcome was never really in doubt.
The judge found in our favour. Not only did we win the case, that there was no injury, he also found that the claimant was what's called fundamentally dishonest, in that he'd fabricated evidence which the court takes a dim view of.
And it was good old CCTV that put the brakes on the false personal injury claim. First Group operates a fleet of over 6,000 buses, carrying around 1.7 million passengers a day. So it's not surprising that from time to time there are minor accidents.
In 2010, one of our London buses has been rounding a corner. He's taken the corner a little bit too tight and he's managed to come into contact with a vehicle that was parked at the side of the road as he's gone round the bend. We've received a claim for the damage to the vehicle, and then sometime later we've been presented with a personal injury claim from the lady with the car.
According to the claimant, this was no minor prang, but a collision that resulted in serious injury.
This claimant's alleged that she was in her vehicle with her seatbelt on when she was hit in the rear by a bus. She's been thrown forwards and backwards, and also been thrown into the interior of her car, striking her chest. This has caused her some problems with general household heavy domestic chores, hanging out her washing. The injury itself is mainly to her shoulder. Treatment involved physiotherapy, and subsequently it may well end up in surgery.
The level of injury was reflected in the potential value of the claim.
All in all, this claim would have been worth around £42,000. That's the injury itself, the surgery costs, and after surgery you may well need some looking after, so we would allow an element of care for that as well. And just about under half of it would have been legal costs on top of that.
Most people would have assumed the woman had suffered a serious injury and First Group was responsible. But Lee's not most people, and right from the off he knew something was amiss.
Normally in an incident where a vehicle is shunted in the rear, you've got a forward-backward movement, so you would expect a sort of whiplash type injury. With this particular one, the main injury is to her shoulder. Now that, coupled with the fact that she didn't actually go and see her GP until some 4 months after the accident, just made us think something's not quite right here. So we immediately thought we would investigate this in a bit more depth, and it was at that stage that we decided to look at the CCTV footage.
What it showed put a huge dent in the claimant's story.
So we look at the CCTV from this incident. We're expecting to see an impact on the vehicle. We know that's happened. There's damage to the car. The bus is rounding the corner. It does hit the car. So this lady's alleging she's been thrown around in her car. She's been moved forward and backwards. There's the glaring, obvious fact that she's not in the car. She's standing by the side of the car. It's absolutely ridiculous. There aren't enough syllables in the word incredulous to describe how I actually felt when I looked at this. I just wanted to scream at the screen saying, she's not in the car. It's just absolutely preposterous that she could even consider putting this claim in. She may as well have been sitting on the bonnet of the car with her feet up, reading the newspaper, wearing a t-shirt saying, I'm not in my car. It's just so blatantly obvious when you look at it.
With the CCTV proving that no injury had occurred, the prognosis for the claim was not looking good.
We sent the CCTV footage to the claimant's solicitors, pointing out the major flaws in their client's case, and unsurprisingly, we've not heard back from them since. I think even the best solicitor in the world is going to have a problem making a claim for personal injury in a car accident where someone wasn't actually even in the car.
From the City London Police Insurance Fraud Team.
Previously, DC Aman Taylor began a search of the home of Jay Solder, an insurance broker suspected of trying to defraud his own industry.
So at the moment, it's got to tell you you're under arrest, okay?
Right.
Now, you're under arrest on suspicion of fraud by false representation relating to the claim that's been made, all right?
Okay.
They've already found a camera that featured in several insurance claims.
So he's got an active policy at the moment.
With somebody else. That's not the one that he had with us.
But the search is about to uncover something completely unexpected.
2 more holidays booked, 2 more claims. A little interesting development here that our policy, which wasn't paid out on, which is the one that Matt's investigated and passed on to us, which is the one that he's been nicked for today, he's actually got another policy in place at the time.
The same trip.
It was covering the same trip.
During the search, we found another travel insurance document for another claim that had been made by Mr. Solder, and found that to be an entirely fraudulent claim as well.
So the first claim he made with my mob, which got paid, I can check to see whether he can be making it. And with us, that's the reason why he walked away from that one, due to the fact that this policy covers the same trip that he bought 2 policies for.
Yeah, so he's gone on that when he's got knocked back from that.
Yeah.
It was the search that kept on giving.
We found a large quantity of cash, which subsequently turned out to be around £6,000 in cash, which had been concealed in a wardrobe. and we found a Rolex watch valued somewhere in the region of about £8,000.
Yeah, it was nice, isn't it?
Is there a story behind this, Jay?
It was replaced by the insurance company.
So what, have you had a loss or theft of one of these before then?
Yeah, in the first burglary.
Oh, okay. So this is the replacement?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Following the off-the-cuff remark made by Mr. Solder about the Rolex being a replacement following a burglary, I decided to dig a bit deeper and contact the insurance companies to try and find out whether or not he had been burgled and whether or not he had been paid out. What we found was that he'd not had one, but he had two home insurance claims with one company, both made within 3 months of each other and totaling over £50,000.
This was a huge new development in the case. In addition to the travel insurance claims they knew about, it appeared that Solder had branched out into household insurance, claiming a staggering amount of money for two burglaries they strongly suspected had never happened.
The raid was a total success as far as we're concerned. We got the person we were looking for. We seized all the items that we were looking for, with the addition of some items that we weren't aware of at that time.
Meanwhile, Jay Solder was given the opportunity to tell his side of the story.
Jay Solder didn't admit to his crimes. The first interview he had at the police station, he answered no comment to all of our questions. And in the second interview, he was given a full disclosure of all the evidence that we had against him, and he still elected to make no comment.
Solder's silence on the matter ultimately made no difference, and the case proceeded to court at the Old Bailey. He admitted 4 fake travel insurance claims and 2 exaggerated household claims. He then had to return to be sentenced, and Aman was there to see justice served.
He was terrified, really. Terrified of what was going to happen. He knew sort of the gravity of the fact that it's such a serious offence over a period of time.
Solder was called in to hear his fate. It wasn't good news.
Today he's been sentenced to 21 months in prison. The judge has the option to suspend it, which he has done in these circumstances. 160 hours of community service, so giving something back to the community. And he's been ordered to pay back £37,000.
For Aman, it's the end of a long, complex investigation.
Today I'm satisfied with the outcome. The outcome is one where we brought an end to the case, so it shows that we'll see it the whole way through.
While Solder avoided a custodial sentence, there's still a heavy price to pay.
Jay Solder's a young man in a very good job. By him committing this insurance fraud has pretty much ruined his life.
My advice to anyone that considers committing this type of crime is to simply not bother. You will get found out, it will get detected, and you could end up standing in front of an Old Bailey judge waiting for a sentence to be passed.
Insurance fraud in the UK has hit epidemic levels. It's costing us over £1 billion every year. That's almost £3.5 million every day. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injuries, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year, it's adding over £50 to your insurance bill. But insurers are fighting back, exposing just under 15 fake claims every hour, armed with covert surveillance systems.
That's a subject out the vehicle.
Sophisticated data analysis techniques, and a number of highly skilled police units. They're catching the criminals red-handed.
Just don't lie to us.
All those con men, scammers and cheats on the fiddle are now caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Today, a massive fraud involving 7 bus crashes is curbed.
In my time at First Group, this is probably one of the biggest frauds I've had to deal with.
A personal injury claim in a pub is knocked back by camera footage.
Everybody who looked at the CCTV was in actual shock. didn't expect for somebody to be quite so brazen.
And a landlord's false fire claim combusts at court.
This is a classic example of a greedy and dishonest individual who was hell-bent on attempting to elicit monies.
Insurance fraud is becoming increasingly attractive to organised criminal gangs, who see it as a way to make a lot of money very quickly, with supposedly little risk of being detected. But con men often get caught out by their own greed, drawing attention to themselves with minor mistakes or multiple claims. Julie Randall is the Transportation Claims Fraud Prevention Officer at First Group. She recently worked on a bus case that involved multiple personal injuries.
For 30 passenger claims to come in from a single bus accident, we'd expect it to be quite a significant accident. We'd expect to see extensive damage to our bus, emergency services on scene. This was just not one of those accidents.
According to the internal company file, it was a very minor accident, so any compensation costs should have been minimal.
We would have expected their claims to have been around £7,000. This would have been for whiplash, loss of earnings, special damages, third-party legal costs.
But the figure of £7,000 seemed out of proportion to the small scale of the accident. Not long afterwards, First Group found themselves looking into another case of a car colliding with a bus full of passengers. And another, and another. In all, 5 very similar incidents came to light, all in Chester, all suspicious. Julie's team launched an investigation.
So, using the latest analytical software we have access to, we found various passenger links between passengers that were on one bus and passengers on another. We had, obviously, the vehicle damage that was verified by forensic engineering as being extremely minor and highly unlikely to cause injury. We had passengers boarding at certain stops that did not live around the area. Ticketing data showed unusual passenger numbers for that time of day on those particular routes. We even had phantom passenger claims presented where, having a look at their addresses, they were not registered there. So this obviously caused us, real concerns.
Real enough for First Group to involve the police. DC Stephen Owens was the chief investigating officer on the case. One thing immediately stood out.
The collisions were all very similar. They were very low speed, low impact collisions, which resulted in very minor damage to both vehicles, the vehicle that drove into the bus and the bus itself.
Despite this, every incident had resulted in dozens of claims. But there was a key piece of evidence which would reveal what was going on. CCTV.
The images start as it's coming up Sealand Road, past the industrial estate. And you can see on the left-hand side, to Rover 25, and you can see it's well over the white line, the junction line. And as the bus approaches, there's no other vehicles on the road. You can see it could easily have pulled out. It chooses not to. And then just as the bus has passed, he seems to pull out and just clip the side of the bus.
As you can see, there was minimal impact to the bus. There was minimal impact to the other vehicle involved. And for the majority of these passengers being injured, I just can't see how it could have happened.
In another of the 5 dubious accidents, the images show the suspicious behaviour of the car driver as the bus travels along its route.
The Audi TT was at the junction for quite some time before our bus passed. And then it just seemed to shoot out into the path of our bus.
He appears to have had to accelerate to hit the corner. Maybe he had second thoughts, but then decided last moment to go ahead with it.
And it's not just the car driver who's acting strangely.
There are numerous passengers on our bus. You can see afterwards they're all hanging around on their phones, which is a little bit suspicious.
And a lot of them do walk to the side of the bus and they take out their mobile phones and they take photographs. Why would you do that? Unless it was in your mind at that time that you wanted to make a claim. Great evidence, great evidence.
And CCTV footage wasn't the only thing the gang had overlooked. The fault vehicle in yet another one of the 5 suspect collisions wasn't properly insured. This meant that the incident was investigated by a team from the Motor Insurers Bureau. Paul Ryman-Tubb is their head of technical.
One of the first things we did was commission a report from a forensic motor engineer to go and have a look at the van, tell us what sort of damage had been sustained to the van, take some photographs, and give us a view as to the severity of the collision.
23 passengers claiming whiplash pointed towards a serious accident, but this was totally contradicted by the report.
The engineer was very clear that this was a very minor collision. He described it as a glancing blow. He took some photographs of it showing a very small dent in the rear panel of the van, so slight that it was very difficult to see on the photographs and hadn't even broken the paintwork.
It was clear from the CCTV that this was more than just a few dodgy whiplash claims. Tellingly, all the personal injury claims were being processed by just one company, Swift Accident Solutions Limited in Chester. And the man behind it, a certain John Smith, was making big bucks.
And how it works, John Smith, as an accident management company, looks to get claims to sell onto accident claim solicitors. He was invoicing in the region of £800 to £960 per claim, so he's getting almost £1,000 per claim that he sold on.
John Smith might have sounded like a fake name, but it was real, just like the money he was turning over from the multiple injury claims.
And when we looked at it and we understood how it worked, John Smith could be the only person who would have done it. What motivation would there be for people to crash into a bus?
Stephen suspected that the people driving the vehicles into the buses were also part of the scam and were being paid for their services.
Now, who would pay them? Well, the person who would benefit. And who would benefit? Well, John Smith.
The net was closing in, but before they could finish the investigation, Stephen and his team were confronted by a chilling new development.
There was another collision on Liverpool Road in Chester. And that collision made us realise that the gang was still active and they were still doing this. And it forced our hand or put pressure on us to act quickly, which is what we did.
In a huge operation, strikes were carried out on the properties of the main suspects, including Smith's office at Swift Accident Solutions, where they found an all-important memory stick.
And on there were details of all the claimants and their mobile phone numbers. So when we looked at his records and those of the people we believe have set up the collision, we could see that they did know everyone. They did know the claimants and they knew them before and after the collision.
Evidence from the strikes also revealed the existence of another incident that had happened several months before. All in all, there were 7 staged collisions involving approximately 200 people and a vast amount of money.
We estimated this to have been worth around £1.7 million, which would have been the financial cost to the insurers involved. In my time at First Group, this is probably one of the biggest frauds I've had to deal with.
And it resulted in a big trial. The case went to Manchester Crown Court, and after a 3-month trial, John Smith was found guilty. For a £1.7 million fraud, he was sentenced to 6.5 years, and the rest of the gang suffered similar fates.
We were extremely pleased with the results of the trial. 30 years in custodial sentences, 15 people prosecuted. The police did a fantastic job.
The consequences are very severe and it should act as a deterrent from people getting involved in such crime.
Although the claims were fake, the accidents were very real, and it's frightening to think what could have happened.
This could have gone very, very wrong. We could have been looking at serious injuries, we could have been looking at fatalities. It could have been elderly people or young children that could have been seriously hurt.
Later, a landlord's fraudulent fire claim goes up in smoke.
Mr Shah's motivation, I think, can be summed up in 2 ways. One was she agreed, and the second was blatant dishonesty.
And a fake insurance claim in the States annihilates an entire neighbourhood. CCTV cameras are increasingly being seen as part of the furniture in the UK's pubs and bars. They're vitally important in these kind of environments, making the difference in cases where it's one person's word against another. Gillian Afori-Nyako is part of JD Wetherspoon's legal department.
We currently have 951 pubs up and down the country, in the UK and in Ireland. We get hundreds of thousands of customers per year walk through our doors.
And ideally, they want everyone to walk back out again, safely and securely at the end of the night. But disaster recently struck at one busy watering hole. An ambulance was called to assist a customer that had come a cropper and sustained a serious injury.
The claimant alleges she walked into our pub and slipped on wet floor. As a result of the fall, she claims that she fractured her leg.
The amount of compensation involved was sobering.
We referred the claim to our solicitors, who priced the whole thing up at around £26,000. This would have included costs for the claimant, for her going to her solicitors, her damages, medical care, and our costs as well.
As with any accident on its premises, Wetherspoons decided to take a close look at what had allegedly happened.
Well, as part of the investigation, we always ask for a copy of the rota, a copy of CCTV, witness statements from anyone who might have seen the accident, from the manager, from any other members of staff who were working that day.
However, this evidence contradicted the story put forward by the claimant.
She claimed that she reported her accident to the manager, yet the first thing that he knew about the accident was when he went outside and she was being attended to by a paramedic.
Could the claimant have made a simple slip-up in telling her side of the story? Luckily, the pub's CCTV would reveal whether the case had legs.
If her story was true, we would have expected to see a woman slip on wet floor, and I imagine people come to her aid, seeing as she'd fallen over, but that's not what we're seeing on the footage.
In fact, the truth was so far from what was alleged that it put the boot into the claim.
We couldn't believe that this claim had ever been made. It was quite clear to see that she'd walked in already injured and on crutches. The whole time that she's there, there's no sign of any accident occurring. They then go out for a cigarette, and the last we see is her leaving because she'd called the ambulance. Everybody who looked at the CCTV was in actual shock. I didn't expect for somebody to be quite so brazen.
The broken leg injury claim was cast firmly aside.
So we sent the footage to her solicitors, and we didn't hear anything back from them afterwards.
And that's where the matter rested. Or so they thought, until a second set of solicitors got in touch.
When we received the second claim notification form, I think we were all quite shocked that it had come through again, and she had nothing to support the allegations that she was making.
She must have suffered a bang to the head in the alleged fall for her to think she could get away with putting the claim in again.
There were major inconsistencies with the claimant's claim. In the first form that she submitted, she said that she was unemployed, whereas in the second form that she submitted, she said that she was a bank nurse and had been unable to work since the date of her accident.
Evidently, the intention was to try and increase the amount of compensation by claiming for loss of earnings. However, the company called time on the second injury claim, and this time it was kicked into touch.
JD Wetherspoon are completely against false claims. If a customer comes into our pub and genuinely hurts themselves, then we are definitely there to help. However, we won't stand for the process being abused.
While technology has made a huge difference, good investigators are able to detect the whiff of fraud from a mile off using nothing but gut instinct. Andy Morris is Assurance Chief Marketing Officer. His company recently dealt with a claim for compensation for a lost mobile phone.
So this claimant was a construction worker. They were working down a manhole in a sewer and everything that conjures up. And unfortunately, the phone, they lost it down the sewer in the effluent.
Ugh, that's one phone you'd never want to use again. During the claims process, technological analysis meant that concerns were logged. Or, to put it another way,
as this case developed, it started to smell.
Assurance fraud team has a nose for a phony story, and their findings supported their suspicions.
It became very clear to our agents that the claimant was using exactly the same telephone number and exactly the same SIM from the handset that had been irretrievably lost down the sewage in the effluent.
And that's where the claim will be going, unless there was a good explanation.
When we then challenged the claimant then informed us that they had gone back down the manhole and fished around the sewer to find the device that they had claimed was lost.
What happened was I was in a manhole working clearing sewage.
Yeah.
And the phone went into the sewage line, but I was able to get the phone and take a SIM card out. But the phone was full of, well, I think you can imagine what it was full of.
Right, okay, yeah. So the phone that went down the manhole, was that used at all after it was retrieved?
No, I threw it away. I got rid of it. It was full of.
But investigators were privy to further analysis, which proved that the SIM and the telephone number were paired with a unique identification number from the mobile.
The pairing of that telephone number with the SIM to the unique identification number on the device. All of those three evidence points and data points for us proved that it was the original phone that the claimant had claimed was lost down the sewer.
Assurant spoke to the claimant about the concerns, and he kicked up quite a stink.
The reason for my call today is just regarding the claim that you have with us at the moment for your missing mobile phone. So when I have a look at the usage on that mobile number, it's showing that the Samsung that you're claiming on, that was used up until the 5th of February with your SIM card.
I just don't understand this at all.
I mean, at this stage, I can't continue the claim any further because...
Will you do that? That's okay, love. Will you do me one favour? Will you cancel my insurance with you?
What I can do, Mr.
No. Can you cancel my insurance with you?
Yeah, I can arrange that for you. That's no problem at all.
You do that for me, and that's the end of the story, and that's fine. You do that.
Okay, then. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
He immediately responded in an emotional fashion. He was very aggrieved about that situation.
As the old saying goes, where there's muck, there's brass. But in this instance, there was lots of muck, but not very much brass.
What was quite strange about this case is that it wasn't a high-end smartphone. The actual device they were claiming for was just a standard phone. And I think psychologically, some people feel that if it's under a certain amount of money, that somehow that's not a crime or that's not fraud.
But mud sticks, and Assurant is determined to flush out any bogus behaviour.
The clear message that this case sends out is if you are thinking about attempting to submit a false claim, don't.
While some fraudsters try to claim for incidents that never happened, some attempt to exploit real events for their own benefit. But without a lot of background planning, their greed often gives them away. Mike Brown is head of counter-fraud intelligence at Direct Line.
Mr. Shah, who in fact is a landlord of a number of properties, contacted Direct Line to initiate a fire claim against his property at Langdale Road, which had been subject to a fire caused by an electrical fault.
According to Mr. Shah, the blaze had caused a significant amount of damage.
The initial claim made by Mr. Shah was in the region of £810,000.
Thankfully, no one had been hurt. With the best part of £1 million on the line, Mike's team took a close look at the case.
It was very quickly established that Mr. Shah had incepted the policy the day before the claim was made.
Investigators quickly assessed the phone recording of Mr. Shah taking out the policy.
I believe you're looking for a landlord policy, is that correct?
That's right, yes.
Okay, so are you the property owner?
Yes.
Fantastic.
The first part of the call sounded genuine enough.
Do you require building cover?
Building, what do you mean by building?
Say building. Are you looking to cover the structure of the property, so the outside, sir? So if it was covered, obviously, if there was a fire, you'd want the building to be covered?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Mr. Shah would have been asked standard questions, one of which would be the current maintenance and condition of that property.
And what's the construction of the base of the property be?
That's a brick building.
They're both brick and made of tile roof,
That's right, yes.
Okay, brilliant. And are the properties in good state of repair?
Yes.
But later in the phone call, they heard something which immediately fired up concerns.
Okay, and what date can we be covered to start, please, sir?
We can cover start from 10th.
10th of June?
10th of, today is 15th of May.
Yeah. Okay, do you need the policy to start immediately, sir?
Yeah, from 10th of May.
That's fine. I wouldn't be able to backdate it, but I can start it from today. Is that all right, sir?
Okay, yeah, you can start.
Okay, thank you.
And at the point of inception, actually asked for the policy to be commenced 5 days previous. That in itself is a flag.
It's a flag because there's no reason to backdate a policy unless you're trying to get cover for an incident that's already happened and you were uninsured at the time. Suspicions had been ignited and a loss adjuster was then sent to the address.
And his estimation of the value of that property prior to the fire taking hold was £250,000. The claim implemented by Mr. Shah was £810,000, clearly an exaggeration of the value of his property.
An exaggeration that would make even an estate agent blush. With doubt smouldering, investigators focused on the blaze.
They retrieved the fire logs from the fire brigade, which has the timings of the initial call from a member of the public, that there was a fire or smoke coming from Langdale Road, to the point of when the fire service arrived on scene, to the point the fire was put under control. That would have been then correlated to when Mr. Shah took out the policy itself for Langdale Road, which, when we look at the timeline, was within 2 hours of the actual fire. So the fire had actually taken place before Mr. Shah had taken the policy out.
The findings were explosive. They now knew the true timeline of events.
That Mr. Shah was on scene at the fire within an hour, and an hour later took out the policy of inception for the property at Langdale Road, and then lodged a claim the following day.
The timeline meant that he'd been less than truthful when he said the property was in good condition.
And all the properties in good state of repair?
Yes.
So basically he lied all the way through the process.
Not only had he tried to claim compensation for his uninsured property, but he also exaggerated the value to try and make a massive profit. As far as Direct Line was concerned, he wasn't entitled to a penny of compensation, and they duly informed him that his claim had been declined. Not content with this outcome, Mr. Shah then proceeded to take the company to court.
The evidence was compelling. Any reasonable person would have walked away from that claim. This is a classic example of a greedy and dishonest individual who was hell-bent on attempting to elicit monies from an insurer.
And Direct Line weren't alone in that assessment.
At the county court, Mr. Shah's own legal advisors withdrew on the basis of professional embarrassment.
Unsurprisingly, his case was extinguished, but Direct Line weren't prepared to leave things there and pass their evidence to the police.
He subsequently appeared before the Old Bailey, where he was convicted for fraud, and he was sentenced to 18 months imprisonment, suspended for 2 years. Mr. Shah's motivation, I think, can be summed up in 2 ways. One was sheer greed, and the second was blatant dishonesty. This was a clear case where Mr. Shah had a property that was uninsured, sustained serious fire damage, and was looking at paying for those repairs himself, and sought to deceive an insurer into footing the bill at an exaggerated rate, as I say, of £810,000.
Mr. Shah got burned when he fraudulently attempted to profit from a fire that had already happened. While in the States, fraudsters are prepared to turn on the heat to take it to a whole other level, and they don't care who gets hurt in the process. Life in the American suburbs is known for being peaceful and largely uneventful. So nothing prepared the residents of Indianapolis for this. A deadly explosion in November 2012 ripped through an entire neighborhood. More than 80 homes were destroyed or damaged in the initial blast, and more were ruined in the fierce blaze which followed the explosion. Buildings, gardens, and cars were wrecked, with repair costs estimated at a staggering $4 million. Given the scale of the devastation, it was remarkable that only 2 people tragically lost their lives. The whole community was affected. Some people found themselves suddenly homeless, some were seriously injured, and others suffered post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of the events of that night. When morning came, it looked like a bomb had been dropped, but the true cause was something no one at the time suspected. Investigators focused their attention on the property at the center of the explosion, the house that was immediately next door to the residence where the couple died. The property turned out to be the home of Monserrate Shirley and her partner Mark Leonard. On the night in question, they'd been out of the house gambling at a nearby casino. The investigation revealed that the couple were in considerable debt, and in the weeks before the blast, insurance on the home had been increased to $300,000. But the real bombshell was that the explosion was no accident. Physical evidence indicated that the house had been filled with gas, which had been ignited using the spark from a microwave set in advance. All the evidence pointed towards Shirley and Leonard deliberately and recklessly blowing up their house to fraudulently collect an insurance payout, with tragic consequences. When the case went to court, Mark Leonard, judged to be the ringleader, was found guilty and sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences without parole and an additional 75 years in prison. Monserrate Shirley pleaded guilty to 2 counts of conspiracy to commit arson as part of a plea agreement. She remains in jail and faces a sentence of over 20 years. While this part of Indianapolis will eventually return to suburban peacefulness, nothing can bring back the 2 people who lost their lives as a result of the couple's sheer greed. Insurance fraud in the UK has hit epidemic levels. It's costing us over £1 billion every year. That's almost £3.5 million every day. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injuries, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year, it's adding over £50 to your insurance bill. But insurers are fighting back, exposing just under 15 fake claims every hour, armed with covert surveillance systems.
That's a subject out the vehicle.
Sophisticated data analysis techniques, and a number of highly skilled police units. They're catching the criminals red-handed.
Just don't lie to us.
All those con men, scammers, and cheats on the fiddle are now caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Coming up, one musical mailman's insurance claim is far from first class.
I would have thought it would be very difficult for Mr. Masumbu to go all the way to Malaysia to go on a stage and play a guitar.
CCTV cameras capture the performance of a lifetime.
As a high-level estimate on the value of the injury, we would have placed that at around about £2,500 to £3,000.
And Agria think they might be dealing with a shaggy dog story.
The lock has been snapped off and both puppies are taken.
We could find no evidence that these puppies ever existed.
In January 2012, the police joined the fight against insurance fraud by launching an elite squad known as IFED.
IFED is Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, which is based in the City of London but is countrywide. IFED is involved in all sorts of insurance fraud. Whether it be for vehicles, personal injury or slip and trip, we cover the whole spectrum.
They've made over 700 arrests and have saved millions of pounds in fraudulent insurance claims. Money which ultimately goes back in our pockets. From now on, fraudsters need to watch their backs.
You carry out fraud and we will follow you and we will arrest you and we will convict you. And we will take everything you gained and give it back to the people who you've robbed.
Over 600,000 of us are injured at work each year. But working as a postman for the national treasure that is the Royal Mail isn't generally considered one of the most hazardous of jobs. You might deliver to the wrong house, or at worst, be on the receiving end of a particularly nasty dog bark. But if we're to believe one former postman, the risks of the job can be life-destroying.
Mr. Mzumbu was at work when he went to the back of the van, opened the sliding door, and took out some parcels, and while he was there, someone driving behind skidded on the wet road and slammed in the back of him.
As a result of the accident, Mr. Musumbu sustained bruising to his torso and upper body, leaving him physically unable to work.
During the course of the following months, he went and sought medical advice and was examined. He couldn't dress himself properly, he couldn't live a normal life, in fact. He actually stated to the doctor that his life was over.
After the accident, Mr. Musumbu received £25,500 in compensation. But with life-changing injuries, he was also potentially in line to receive a six-figure payout from the insurance company should his claim be settled. However, with a claim of this scale, before handing over any more money, the insurers wanted to check a few facts.
Before any payout, an insurer will make an assessment and do their own investigations.
In this day and age, many people love to share what they've been up to by posting it on the internet. But unfortunately for Mr. Musumbu, investigators discovered one little nugget online that I'm sure he would have preferred to have kept quiet.
They looked at a blog, and this was a blog from the Malaysia Music Festival, which showed Mr. Musumbu on stage playing a guitar.
Just to be clear, that's him on the right. Let's have a look at that again. Surely a man in your condition shouldn't be strumming the guitar with such gusto. You could put your back out.
I would have thought it'd be very difficult for Mr. Musumbu to go all the way to Malaysia to go on a stage and play a guitar. The insurers, of course, were pretty suspicious of Mr. Musumbu.
But jetting off to Malaysia wasn't the only travelling he was doing. Investigators discovered that Mr. Musumbu had been involved in yet another car accident and was driving at the time, which is something he told the medical examiner he couldn't do.
They put a surveillance team behind Mr. Musumbu to watch if he was, in fact, as he said he was, someone who was restricted in their movement.
Yet again, when investigators saw the footage the surveillance team had captured, they couldn't believe their eyes.
The surveillance footage showed Mr. Musumbu getting in and out of his car outside his home address with bags of shopping, guitar, and other instruments, and walking quite freely to and from his home address.
That looks like an awfully big box to be carrying for a man who claims he struggles to walk.
He seemed to be walking perfectly all right. He was not impaired, and he certainly wasn't walking with a stick.
Hang on, I thought you said you couldn't drive. You want the passenger side.
It was now that there was grave doubts as to Mr. Musumbu's claims, and he was called in for a further medical examination for his injuries.
But when Mr. Musumbu arrived, the miracle cure that had enabled him to drive again and rock out on stage with his guitar appeared to have worn off. Strange, that.
He came in walking very badly with the use of a stick, and in fact needed the help of the doctor to undress so the examination could take place. By now, the doctor was aware of the possibility that the claim was bogus, and during the examination could find no injuries consistent with Musumbu's status at that point.
Sounds like this postman's claim form needs to be sent back to the sorting office.
Mr. Musumbu did have injuries as a result of his accident, but they were very minor in comparison to what he had actually alleged and which he'd paid out for.
By now, it was clear that Mr. Musumbu had been seriously exaggerating the severity of his injuries. And with hundreds of thousands of pounds on the line, the case was referred to IFED, who wasted no time in delivering the bad news to their suspect.
Musumbu was arrested in the early part of 2014. The full facts were put to him, including the video footage. Mr. Musumbu denied that the claim that he'd made was false and stuck to his story throughout.
However, his argument didn't stand up, and IFED hit Mr. Musumbu with 2 charges of fraud before he appeared at the Old Bailey to face the music.
Mr. Musumbu, faced with the overwhelming evidence against him, could do nothing else but to plead guilty.
Musumbu was ordered to repay the £25,500 he'd already wrongfully received from his £300,000 claim, and was sentenced to 18 months in prison.
I don't know what made him turn to crime apart from greed. He had a perfectly good job and a good pension and a good lifestyle. He chose to do something different. He took the wrong choice, and now he's spending 18 months in prison.
Still to come, 2 puppies go walkies, apparently.
If I'd got 2 new family members and they'd gone missing, I'd be out looking for them.
And First Group take a sure-footed approach.
We did go back to them and say, we have no intention of making any payments in this. If you want to get anything else from us, you're going to have to sue us.
Whilst the majority of insurance claims are legitimate and deserving of payouts, insurers in the UK uncover a whopping 350 cases of fraud every day. Thankfully, public liability experts like Rob Smith-Wright from QBE are on hand to identify the claims that are more opportunistic than honest. Although, as Rob knows only too well, some bogus claimants trip themselves up with their own stupidity.
The circumstances that the claimant reported to us was that he was on his way to a local pub and was using our policyholders' car park as a shortcut through. As he was walking through the car park, he's tripped over in a pothole and suffered soft tissue injuries to his ankle and foot. As a high-level estimate on the value of the injury, we would have placed that at around about £2,500 to £3,000.
Luckily, the company who owned the car park had a CCTV camera rolling at the time. It sounds like a particularly nasty accident, so viewer discretion is advised.
The CCTV evidence showed the claimant entering the car park. It showed him walking across the car park, and quite visible in the CCTV, and would have been to anyone walking there, would have been 2 potholes. He then stops, turns around, walks back straight into the direction of the pothole. As he gets to the pothole, he steps into it and then falls quite theatrically to the floor.
Quite theatrically? I've seen pantomime dames more convincing than that.
It's at that point that we realised that this was a fabricated incident. As you can see, the claimant walks into the car park and the CCTV quite clearly shows the pothole is visible.
I've got to see that again. Can we rewind it? OK, so he comes in. Mind the hole, son. Phew, danger avoided. Does a U-turn. Hang on. And he's down. More like a feather than a ton of bricks, to be fair. Come on, get yourself up now. Come on. Go on, you can do it. OK, this chap's really milking it now. But I'll give him his due, he is committed to the role.
A picture paints 1,000 words, and this footage absolutely identifies to us that this was a fabricated incident and should not be worthy of compensation payment.
And it soon became obvious that this chap's case was full of potholes.
There was no shortcut through this car park to the local pub that the claimant was visiting. We also established that the claimant had been living in the area for 9 years, and therefore he would have known this. We also established that the particular local pub that he was going to visit wasn't actually open at the time he was walking through the car park either.
As far as QBE were concerned, this actor's audition was over.
We made a referral of this case to IFED, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department. He admitted that he did indeed fabricate the incident. His reasons were he was short of money and he wanted some extra funds. He was of previously good character, so he was given a caution.
So, if anyone out there thinks they can trip up insurance companies, remember, it's more than likely that you'll be the one to fall flat on your face. Africa, with its breathtaking scenery, bustling cities, and diverse wildlife. It's one of the most beautiful continents in the world. But for one woman, it was the scene of a nightmare. Fortunately, travel insurers Seeger were on hand to help during this difficult time.
The customer contacted our emergency assistance helpline to advise us that while she was visiting her husband in Nigeria, he had sadly passed away. We naturally offered the customer our sincere condolences. We then explained to her that we would do everything we could to assist her at this difficult time. She now wanted our assistance in returning home early. This wasn't a particularly high-value claim, around £700.
At least with Seeger on hand to help, she wasn't going through this horrific ordeal alone.
In order to assist the customer, we do need various documents to substantiate the claim. The customer provided us with a death certificate for her husband and also provided us with details of the doctor that treated her husband before his sad passing.
With everything they needed, Seeger began to process the claim.
We asked our in-house medical team to contact the doctor to find out exactly what happened leading up to her husband's death.
But it was at this point that things got suspicious.
Our in-house medical expert spoke with the doctor, but came away from the call thinking that they weren't actually speaking with a genuine doctor.
What made them jump to that conclusion?
The alleged doctor couldn't even understand any basic medical terms.
A doctor who doesn't know his knees from his kidneys. Just a bit worrying. But surely the death certificate will be enough proof.
Due to the international nature of our business, we're well versed in knowing what original and genuine documents actually look like, particularly death certificates. And on this occasion, the death certificate didn't conform to the normal standards we would expect for this type of document.
Concerned, Seeger decided to check the death certificate with the hospital where it supposedly came from.
Our investigator was then referred to the medical director, who proceeded to write a statement for our investigator confirming that the death certificate was a false document and didn't ever originate from their hospital.
It appeared that Seeger were dealing with a phantom fatality, and by now the woman's claim was in a critical condition.
We were particularly shocked at what lengths the customer had gone to try and make this fraudulent claim. We decided to email the customer and highlight what our concerns were with her claim and invited her comments. As we didn't receive a response from the customer, we formally declined the claim.
The claim was well and truly dead and buried, and the claimant was incredibly lucky to walk away.
Is it really worth potentially getting a criminal record for the sake of £700?
We all trip up and take a tumble every now and then, but usually we pick ourselves up, dust ourselves down, and hope nobody saw. But sometimes falls can result in nasty injuries, as Lee Ingram from First Group discovered when he dealt with a claim from a woman who'd been injured at a train station.
The initial allegations from the claimant were that she'd slipped on a piece of wet cardboard just inside the entrance of the station, and this had caused her to fall over and hit her head.
Ouch, that does sound painful.
The injuries sustained were quite serious. She'd knocked herself out, so she was unconscious, and she had a really bad cut to her head. This claim would have been worth around about £18,000, so that would have covered the injury itself, treatment fees, and replacement of the clothing, and legal costs on top of that as well.
First Group take personal injuries very seriously. So the first thing they did was investigate the woman's claim. But from the off, something didn't ring true.
The very fact that she said that cardboard had been put down to soak up the water was a little bit unusual. I mean, when people are trailing wet footprints in bad weather through stations, you wouldn't put cardboard down. You would send out a clean-up crew to try and make sure that any excess water was removed.
Far from happy with the woman's description of the incident, Lee and his team set about cleaning up this claim, and the first step was to try and establish what really did happen.
We thought we'd go back to our client, get the CCTV and surveillance footage and see what else we could find out. Fortunately, when we're looking at railway footage, they've got static cameras and they tend to cover most of the station, so you can pretty much plot someone's passage throughout the whole of the station.
But when Lee examined the footage, it painted a rather different picture to the one the claimant would have First Group believe.
What we noticed from the CCTV is that the incident clearly doesn't happen just inside the entrance of the station. That's not true at all. This is a covered station. The floors don't look wet. There's no signs of the alleged cardboard that she's tripped on.
So, with the CCTV clearly showing no wet patches on the floor and certainly no cardboard, what really did happen?
We'll see her pause at the top of one escalator, and you think, right, she's a little bit wary of escalators. That's quite normal, quite a few people are.
I can see those metal steps aren't filling her with confidence.
When she comes to go up the next escalator, she pauses for some 22 seconds before she actually plucks up the courage to get on the escalator. She eventually goes up about 4 steps, and then she just takes a really hard fall backwards. It's clearly a genuine accident. She has taken a nasty tumble. You can see she's hit her head on the way down. She's landed just in a heap on the escalator.
Luckily for this poor woman, the public and station staff were there to help her back to her feet.
She really does hit her head on the way down, and you can understand that's a metal tread as well, so that's going to make a nasty whack. You can see why she's knocked out.
There's no disputing that this was a nasty accident, and thankfully the woman recovered from her injuries.
Looking at this, you can clearly see she's just lost her footing and fallen backwards. She's lied about the circumstances. No one is to blame for that. It's just an unfortunate accident.
First Group sent their CCTV evidence off to the claimant's solicitors to prove once and for all that there was no soggy cardboard.
So we've sent the footage back to her solicitors. We've pointed out there's no tripping hazard as was alleged. They've then come back to us and said we made a mistake. It was actually a wet floor she slipped on. The floors weren't wet. That's not true at all, as you can see from the footage.
As far as Lee was concerned, it was what the woman and her solicitors weren't saying that spoke volumes.
I think the key point here is that all the way along, we've got an allegation of a slip on a wet floor. Never have they mentioned an escalator.
Armed with concrete evidence from the CCTV cameras, First Group took a robust stance and flat out refused to settle the claim.
These solicitors did want to carry on with this claim, but we did go back to them and say we have no intention of making any payments in this. If you want to get anything else from us, you're going to have to sue us. They've never come back to us on that, so it looks like they've accepted what we were saying.
So for any would-be claimants out there who think they can lie about an accident, Lee has a message.
Where there's a situation where we've caused something to happen, we would really like to get those claims dealt with, compensate people for what they're entitled to. In situations where they're going to make things up, though, and they're just not true, we're not going to make payments on those.
With more and more cameras watching our every move, potential fraudsters need to watch their step. There are 8.5 million dogs around the country. And for many of us, they're more than just pets. They're part of the family. Thankfully, insurers are there to help protect our furry little friends during their time of need.
Good morning, Kennel Club Pet Insurance. You're through to Megan. How can I help?
So when a dog owner called up to report the theft of 2 puppies worth £3,000, Simon Wheeler's team were more than happy to get their paws into the claim.
The first we heard from the claimant in this case was that he'd had 2 bulldog puppies stolen. He'd come down early in the morning and the padlock on his garage door had been broken and the 2 puppies stolen. There weren't really any alarm bells that gave our claims handlers any inkling that there might be problems with this claim.
The police have been out, we've knocked the relative neighbours, the lock had been snapped off the building, secure building, the lock has been snapped off and both have been taken.
Have you notified your local vets at all?
I was just because obviously we've they took my daughter from school and I was waiting for the police. Only now the last couple of hours, the last 2 hours, I've had to get everything done to get finished packing and stuff for holidays.
Hey, did he just say he's about to go on holiday?
We're going away, we're leaving like after 3 hours of this morning. We're trying to get our cases packed and we've got a few things to finish off the route of our buying, so we're a little bit strapped for time.
Now, for me, if I'd got 2 new family members and they'd gone missing, the last thing I would do is go on holiday. I'd be out looking for them. I'd be panicking and doing everything possible to try and find them.
It doesn't sound to me as though the owner is exactly missing his furry pals too much.
I don't know if your puppies are microchipped yet.
No, they're not. They haven't been, no.
Okay.
Hang about, you're telling me you've just spent $3,000 on a couple of puppies and didn't chip them? So much for puppy love. With all these question marks hanging over the claim, investigators got on the dog and bone.
When we began our investigations, the first thing we discovered was that neither puppy had ever been seen by a vet.
As there were no leads on the dog's whereabouts, investigators turned to technology to dig a little deeper.
It was very evident that the policyholder was an avid user of social media. There were postings everywhere, but surprisingly, no mention that he'd acquired 2 puppies, no mention that they'd been stolen, and very little coverage, certainly no pictures of those puppies. When pushed further, he came up with a single picture of 2 bulldog puppies. They could have been any old bulldogs.
I sent you a picture of the pups when I brought the pups home.
Yeah, with the puppies on their own, so what we actually need is a view with the dog, with the puppies.
All the pictures were stored to my phone, and because my phone was broken, they replaced my phone and I lost all my photographs.
Okay, so let me get this right. The puppies have apparently never been to the vets, have never been microchipped, and the owner doesn't have a single photo of him with the dogs. It's not looking good for this chap, but I'll give him his due. He doesn't give up easily.
Good morning, Kennel Club Pet Insurance. You're through to Megan. How can I help?
Megan, I've got a claim on going at the minute. Please, could I speak to the claims team?
Claims department.
Can I give you a policy number?
Morning, Kennel Club Pet Insurance. Speaking on my
Good
afternoon, the Kennel Club Pet Insurance. Shane speaking. How can I help?
Just looking at something on claim this week. So just wondering what was progress and as well.
But no matter how many times he called, there was no chance Agria were going to roll over on this one.
By the time we'd exhausted most of the avenues to try and establish that the puppies existed, the policyholder was getting quite aggressive with our claims handlers. But it was all to try and establish and verify his claim.
How he paid for the pups and how I got the money for the pups is no concern of the Kennel Club whatsoever. I shouldn't have to explain to the Kennel Club where I got the money from. Well, I've done everything you've asked, so, it makes me feel like I'm the criminal here.
I think he might have hit the nail right on the head.
After trying very hard over a long period of time, over successive phone calls, we could find no evidence that these puppies ever existed.
He'd made a right dog's dinner of this claim.
The claim's been declined. We sent a letter to you yesterday. It was posted yesterday.
They taking 3 months to turn around and tell me they're not going to pay. I'll speak to a solicitor, I will.
The policyholder's response to the decline of the claim was that he would take our decline letter and take it to the solicitors. We never heard from him again.
And finally, proof that a pretty face doesn't guarantee model behaviour. Meet Shauna Lynn Palmer. But her gorgeous smile hides an ugly secret. Just 2 days before entering this beauty pageant, she told her employers that she was claiming compensation for an injury she'd suffered while working as a clerk. According to her statement, she'd fractured her toe so severely that she couldn't put any weight on her foot or wear shoes for any length of time. So she shouldn't have been able to parade around, yet alone wear these. So either her commitment to world peace allowed her to smile through the pain, or there was something fraudulent going on. With lots of videos from the pageant on social media, Shauna's employers were soon onto her. The compensation claim was given the boot. Shauna was ordered to pay $6,000 and given 50 hours community service, proving that while she may have been blessed with beauty, the brain side of things need a bit more work. Insurance fraud in the UK has hit epidemic levels. It's costing us over £1 billion every year. That's almost £3.5 million every day. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injuries, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year, it's adding over £50 to your insurance bill. But insurers are fighting back, exposing just under 15 fake claims every hour, armed with covert surveillance systems.
There's a subject out the vehicle.
Sophisticated data analysis techniques. And a number of highly skilled police units. They're catching the criminals red-handed.
Just don't lie to us.
All those con men, scammers and cheats on the fiddle are now caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Today, the Met Traffic Unit raids a fraudulent claims management company.
The lengths people will go to get some money out of the insurance company, putting themselves at risk. I think it's extremely frightening.
Water way to make a false claim for a lost phone.
Whilst these stories and these tales, are mythical, they're fairy tales, basically.
And a fake injury claim is dealt a knockout blow.
The claimant was making up pretty much all of his evidence.
In recent years, insurance companies have realised the importance of working together to combat fraud. The Insurance Fraud Bureau, or IFB, was formed to help share information, work with the police, and stop fraudsters in their tracks.
They think they're just committing a few frauds and it's going to go unnoticed amongst an entire industry. The reality is that the IFB has in excess of 140 million documents from claims and policies across the industry. We analyse those and we're looking to find the trends and patterns that fraudsters are trying to hide from us.
One such trend involves claims management companies. These businesses process insurance claims on behalf of the general public.
Unfortunately, claims management companies are very frequently exploited by criminal gangs. Out of all the live investigations the IFB currently have, around a half of those investigations have a claims management company at the core of what they're doing.
These fraudulent claims management companies make money by deliberately causing or inducing accidents.
Induced accidents being where you take a vehicle out onto the road and you don't have an accident, you actually purposefully create a collision by stamping your brakes on in front of an innocent member of the public.
This is how it works. First, the gang choose a victim. Then they move their two cars into position in front of the target. Gang car number 1 then slams on its brakes. Gang car 2 reacts by braking hard, resulting in a rear-end shunt from the victim. Gang car 1 then turns off at the next possible turning, pretending to be unaware of the crash, leaving the victim supposedly at fault for the damage to gang car 2. The fraudulent claims management company then processes the claim and exaggerates the amount of damage and injury in order to get more compensation. But all that's about to change.
The fact is, with our data on the scale that we have and state-of-the-art technology, there is no longer anywhere for them to hide.
It's not just the IFB who has them in their sights.
It's frightening at the amount that is actually being committed, the level, you know, the lengths people will go to get some money out of the insurance company, you know, putting themselves at risk. I think it's extremely frightening.
DI Dave Hindmarsh heads up the Metropolitan Police's Roads and Transport Policing Command. His team has built a strong reputation for detecting this type of organised fraud. One of their most notable successes was a North London outfit.
Around about November 2011, Cammy Claims Management was flagged to us through intelligence policing as a company which was a claims management company and were suspected of deliberately causing crashes with innocent road users.
The company secretary of North London-based Cammy Claim Management Limited was one Andrei Malaziak. And according to the police intelligence, he was using the company to rake in big bucks.
The way Cammy Claims were making financial benefit out of this was in a number of ways. First of all, they would arrange for the collisions to occur, so that'd be an induced collision. They would then sell the personally injury claims to a solicitor. Now, at the time, they would then be they would receive a solicitor's referral fee of several £100s per claim. They would also submit claims for storage of cars. Often the cars weren't stored, but they'd still submit claims. But most importantly, the bulk of the financial benefit was through what's called credit hire, which is where the innocent party, if it was a genuine crash, would be entitled to a like-for-like replacement car. So they would purport to hire a car when that car was often not hired or didn't even exist.
The credit hire cars might have been fake, but the money changing hands was real.
There is a box standard figure of around about a simple collision will cost an insurer around about £60,000.
Dave and his team launched an investigation, and the results were disturbing.
We were able to say that specifically 2 collisions, which happened in early 2012, were deliberate in that they were induced purely for making money out of third-party insurers.
If, as they suspected, the company was acting as a front for criminal activity, the police unit needed to move quickly to shut it down and eliminate the risk to the public.
It moved to the next phase, which would be the search and arrest phase. We obtained several warrants from the Magistrates Court, and they were executed on various home addresses and the business premises of Cammy Claims.
Early one morning, the team struck.
Clear in here.
DC Rob Eastick managed the search at location 1.
Right, so what we're going to do now is just have a good search of this place, really have a good look around, see if we can find any mobile phones or any documents in relation to insurance claims.
And that's just what they find.
In the fact, we found quite a lot of documents, a lot of banking documents, and a lot of documents in relation to accidents. Perhaps that's part of a larger conspiracy. I don't know, but there is a lot of stuff we're taking.
Later, there's more to come from the search.
That one is on the list. She says, can you take it?
And some big pieces of evidence are seized.
All told, with the searches we did that morning, we seized 10 motor vehicles that we were able to identify had been used in criminality.
According to Ofcom, 93% of adults own or use a mobile phone in the UK. With so many handsets, phone cover is now a significant sector of the insurance industry.
We've spoken yesterday about the claim you're making for your iPhone 6.
Also,
Andy Morris is Assurance Chief Marketing Officer. Listening to claimants spin yarns is all part of the job for the company's fraud investigators.
Whilst these stories and these tales you know, are mythical or almost made up. They're fairy tales, basically. What's really clear is these fraudsters are determined and focused to attempt to defraud the really good customers in the industry over £1 billion each year.
One claimant recently called to register the loss of his phone in particularly unusual circumstances.
They claimed that they had been involved in a fight. They'd fallen into a canal and lost their iPhone.
Sounds like a flight of fancy, or should that be fight of fancy? Doubts were flooding in and an investigation was launched.
We immediately reviewed the case, as we have to, on its individual merits, and the circumstances of the claim flagged with our fraud triggers and our fraud team, which then resulted in a subsequent call from our fraud team with the claimant.
The reason why I'm calling is that your claim has been escalated for further assessment and investigation with the fraud and investigation team.
Okay.
This is mainly just the fact that the phone is lost within a very short period of time of the contract and insurance being added.
Okay.
So it's just a normal process we have in place.
The call handler's training was key in getting to the bottom of the case.
One of the things that our team is expert and skilled in doing is a interview technique with the claimants. We ask questions around, you know, did the claimant understand the value of the device, or had they sold the device, or ultimately just trying to understand a little bit more information.
And was that phone yours for your use, or was the contract under your name for someone else to use the phone?
No, for my use.
Okay. Could you confirm for me what do you believe has happened to that phone, please?
Like I said on the paperwork, he's got lost. I ended up in the water.
Okay.
Doubts were starting to surface that the phone had ever been lost at all, and they were dealing with a totally false claim. Further investigation revealed what had really happened.
We received information through our network of partners and our network of data that indeed this device had been sold to a recycler on the 26th of May, which was the day before they purchased the insurance.
They had sold the phone, then taken out insurance, then tried to make a claim to get an additional payout. It was time to take the plunge and challenge the insured about the sale of the phone.
So we've got all CCTV information, and we have the address and passport documentation of the person that has been in the store. What have you got to say?
What do you want me to say?
The claimant had been caught out, but if they had that sinking feeling, they weren't letting on. In fact, they went on the defensive.
We may pass information over to the police as this can be deemed as fraud against your insurance policy.
Okay. It's probably fraud against my insurance policy anyway, because I shouldn't even be insured anyway.
Well, you are,
because
and you have...
Well, my contract's voided, because if you read the terms and conditions, I'm not supposed to have insurance if I've got the phones insured under somebody else, and they've been insured under somebody else before. The insurance makes no difference between you, because it's void.
So all I'm saying...
Contracts don't exist, because you can't have two insurance.
You can have 10 insurances if you like, but you can only make one claim. You can.
You can't have... Why would I have 10 insurance policies on one mobile phone?
But he was totally out of his depth. The existence of multiple policies doesn't void them. It's only multiple claims that are ruled out.
Now going away from our conversation. I work with insurance.
Okay, carry on. Okay then, so what's the crack then? Come on, you tell me the crack then.
So as I was saying, obviously you try to mislead the shop and your insurance, and this is fraud against the insurance, so your claim will be declined.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Thank you, bye.
At this point, the claim had well and truly sunk, and assurance heard nothing more from the man.
I do think that the fraudsters underestimate the amount of information that we have either on them or the device itself, and what becomes very clear through the claims process is upon presentation of that quite hard evidence that the claimants then ultimately will disappear.
Or in this case, they'll sink without a trace. Any business that is accessed by members of the public has to have public liability insurance in case anyone suffers an injury on the premises. But according to figures from the Association of British Insurers, so-called slip and trip frauds increased by a staggering 75% last year. Meaning scammers see this type of insurance as a soft target.
Our job is to pay claims when somebody's injured quickly and fairly, and the majority of claims that come in here are honest claims where something's happened and people are injured. But unfortunately there are a proportion where they're just made up. Either injuries happen and it's not our fault, not our customer's fault, or nothing's happened at all.
Richard Hiscox is Aviva's Director of Casualty Claims. The insurer operates a unit in Bishopbriggs, which specialises in investigating injuries. They recently looked at what appeared to be an open and shut case.
The third party claimed that as he went into a shop doorway, the automatic electric doors were malfunctioning and closed on him. Yeah, he said that after the doors closed on him, he suffered injuries to his head, suffered some dizziness and concussion.
On the face of it, it sounded like he'd sustained a serious head injury, and this was reflected in the potential value of the claim.
We put an estimate on our £8,900 to cover his injuries and his legal costs.
With such a large amount of money on the line, Richard's team put their heads together to work out exactly what had gone wrong.
When we did the normal investigation, I think that's when things began to go awry, because the witness statements from the people who worked in the shop and then subsequently the CCTV footage told a bit of a different story.
That's putting it mildly. Maybe the blow to his head was a bit more serious than he first thought, because the CCTV completely contradicted his account.
So this is a really interesting piece of video evidence, because you'll see that the guy who's a claimant comes into the shop, a normal busy shop entrance, people passing by in the street, and him standing in the doorway and nothing happening except the doors are open as they ought to be. And then you see the guy running behind, crossing the road, entering the shop and assaulting our claimant.
The CCTV evidence dealt the claim a knockout blow. Although the man had been injured, it wasn't the fault of the shop doors, which were in full working order, allowing other shoppers to enter.
Very interestingly, somebody else comes into the shop from outside who just steps over him, obviously keen to get his pint of milk. One of the things that occurs to me is, our shop workers are trying to look after him, and he later then puts in a claim, which seems entirely unfair.
Unfair and unwise, considering that the whole incident was captured on camera.
The claimant was making up pretty much all of his evidence.
Confident that there was no case to answer, Aviva shut the door on the claim.
Bye-bye. We sent a letter of repudiation to his solicitors, followed it up by sending them a copy of the CCTV footage, and they very quickly withdrew the claim and then declined to represent the claimant anymore.
Richard's team had successfully headed off the false claim, and they never heard anything more from the man.
Well, I hope this gives a strong message that if you put in a spurious claim, we will defend the interests of our customers and we'll take it as far as we need to.
Some people seem to think that what goes on tour stays on tour. But when it comes to travel insurance fraud, a false claim is a false claim, no matter what language it's made in. SIGA is a company that provides global emergency assistance and travel and medical claims services.
Good afternoon, SIGA Special Investigations. How can I help you?
Simon Cook is the head of Special Investigations, and he recently dealt with a claim from a traveller who'd experienced a theft.
The customer told us he was travelling within India by road and he pulled over to have a much needed break. When the customer got back to his car, he realised the car had been broken into and his personal possessions and cash had been stolen.
The victim was far from being a stereotypical broke backpacker.
The customer's claiming for £3,000 worth of personal possessions and £1,000 in cash, so the combined total of the claim was £4,000.
A substantial sum for a travel claim, and doubt soon crept in.
We had some initial concerns with the claim because the customer was claiming for £1,000 in cash when he only had 4 days left of his 30-day trip within India. We would certainly have to question why he had that much cash left on him at the end of his trip and why it was in sterling.
Not to mention why you'd leave that much cash unattended in a car. Other issues meant the claim was struggling to get out of first gear.
We also required a police report to have some independent evidence to support that the incident did in fact occur.
And further evidence was provided about the damage to the car.
He later provided us with an invoice from an auto repair shop to confirm that the car window had in fact been replaced.
But doubts remained, and at this point Simon's team decided to park the claim until they'd spoken to the insured.
We decided to conduct a telephone interview with the customer. And in the interview, the customer provided inconsistent information about the circumstances. He also provided inconsistent information about when and how he reported the matter to the Indian police.
The claimant had done little to accelerate his case, and with concerns still mounting, Seeger requested more evidence.
Bye-bye. He later provided us with 2 additional police reports, which was very strange for a theft that would occur in India. You would only expect to really receive 1 police report.
This brought the total up to 3 completely different reports. There was me thinking police officers hated extra paperwork.
The first one was just confirming that an incident had occurred. The second one, there was additional information about where the bag was stored within the vehicle. And the third one was confirming that a window had in fact been smashed in the car. Due to the inconsistent information the customer actually provided to us, we were concerned whether the incident had occurred in the manner he had described, if at all.
Some people might have thought that with the incident happening thousands of miles away, there was nothing much to be done. But Simon was prepared to go the extra mile.
We decided to appoint one of our overseas investigators to go out to the police station to validate the 3 police reports and also to go to the auto repair shop to see whether that invoice was in fact genuine.
What he found meant it almost certainly wasn't.
Well, our overseas investigators spent about an hour canvassing the area trying to find the actual auto repair shop, but it was nowhere to be found. He then decided to speak with local residents and shop owners, and no one had ever heard of this auto repair shop.
But the key line of inquiry was into the multiple police reports.
Our overseas investigator interviewed the police officer in charge, who confirmed that the first police report was genuine. The officer in charge then looked at the second and third police reports, and he said that he's never seen any police reports such as that in his life, and they didn't originate from that police station.
It was arresting evidence that something was seriously wrong with the claim, and Seeger took action.
We formally repudiated the claim and invoked the fraud condition that's outlined in his insurance policy. We didn't hear anything further from the customer, which I think says a lot.
Not only did the claimant go away empty-handed, there will be potentially serious consequences if he ever returns to India.
Due to the fact that the customer provided 2 false police reports, the officer in charge did in fact then issue a warrant for the customer's arrest. So next time he returns to India, the police are going to be after him.
Right.
Previously, DI Dave Hindmarsh of the Met began a search on a property connected to Cammy Claim Management Limited in North London, a claims management company he suspected was behind 2 induced collisions.
Clear in here.
We forced entry because we've got a search warrant. We're just in the process of searching the premises for any evidence.
Signed on one person, searching one room, I think.
The warrant's downstairs as well.
But the raid is about to move up a gear as Dave heads over to the second location, the main company office.
We will meet one of the directors who's been arrested this morning, and we'll do a search looking for relevant evidence relating to what we're investigating.
That man was Andrei Malaziak, the company secretary behind Cammy Claim Management.
You use that one for business as well? Kind of, but nothing has done on it.
What we were looking for was evidence of criminality. That would be fraudulent insurance claims, evidence of cross-credit hire. We were looking for any other evidence that would suggest that they were involved in other fraudulent claims.
And it wasn't long before that evidence was forthcoming.
Went for the pencil.
Tony.
How was that found? Was that
bottom drawer?
We found a quantity of cash. We found evidence of claims that had been altered in order to facilitate more fraudulent claims.
Satisfied with the haul from the Cammy office, Dave headed back to the first location, where the search wasn't just focused on paperwork, they were after much bigger pieces of evidence too.
We've got 2 vehicles that we believe have been used in this particular crime, and as such, we're going to seize them as evidence. In addition to these 2 vehicles, another gentleman's been arrested. Yeah, good result at the moment. All told, with the searches we did that morning, we seized 10 motor vehicles that we were able to identify had been used in criminality. That one is on the list. She says, can you take it? Those cars have clearly been obtained through fraud, so we need to get rid of those cars, take them off the criminals. And not only that, they're evidence. We're able to prove that these cars were in possession of the organised gang, and they were later used as decoy cars or cars that were being crashed into.
Andrei Malaziak was taken away for questioning at a local police station. Later in the investigation, his associate, Ian Valduva, was also arrested. Eventually, a date was set at Southwark Crown Court.
All of the evidence that we'd had uncovered was presented to the judge, which ultimately led to early guilty pleas. Maljelik was sentenced to 12 months imprisonment. The other male, Ian Valduva, was sentenced to 4 months imprisonment for his role in the scam.
Malaziak had been the company secretary and was instrumental in arranging the collisions. Valduva had a much lesser part in the fraud, but his sentence sent out a strong message.
He handed over his car to the gang to be crashed into. I think that's quite significant that he went to prison, because it shows how the courts are taking these matters seriously. And what I would say is if you hand over your car in these circumstances, if you are convicted, then you must expect that you will receive a custodial sentence.
Ultimately, this type of fraud affects all of us.
Every single person who has an insurance premium will pay a little bit extra because of these frauds. That's the financial impact. It's actually more serious than that because these people are deliberately causing crashes on the roads. Now, they don't know what the outcome's going to be. Someone could be seriously injured or killed. So it is really, really important to stop these people who are doing this, these type of frauds.
Insurance fraud in the UK has hit epidemic levels. It's costing us over £1 billion every year. That's almost £3.5 million every day. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injuries, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year, it's adding over £50 to your insurance bill. But insurers are fighting back, exposing just under 15 fake claims every hour, armed with covert surveillance systems.
That's a subject out the vehicle.
Sophisticated data analysis techniques, and a number of highly skilled police units. They're catching the criminals red-handed.
Just don't lie to us.
All those con men, scammers and cheats on the fiddle are now caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Coming up, one fraudster performs a vanishing act.
She was wanted by all 43 police forces and was literally on the run.
A victim of a road traffic accident has a change of heart.
He'd obviously been allured to the money that had been put aside for him.
And RSA encounter the world's unluckiest dog owners.
When you looked at the invoices and the supporting documentation, they didn't really stack up.
It is estimated that there were around 4 million offences of theft in the UK last year. So it goes without saying that insuring your belongings is something worth doing. Whether you bought something outright or are just hiring it, insurance is there to protect you if things go walkies. But unfortunately, not all claims are what they appear. And that's where claim validation specialists like ICOG come in. Managing Director Tara Shelton's previous experience as a police officer and psychologist came in handy when she dealt with a claim from a woman named Diane Thompson, who had become a victim of a mugging.
She was in a park in London and she had been approached by 3 males who robbed her of 6 cases of photographic equipment that she'd hired to make a music video. The equipment in total was worth £150,000.
£150,000? Clearly this wasn't your average camera.
It's more to do with Hollywood blockbuster movies. That's the type of camera it is.
Unsurprisingly, with a claim of that size, the insurance company were keen for Tara to find out more. So she gave Diane a call.
Hello. I was filming a music video. Can I ask why you needed such sophisticated equipment? I like it to look a certain way. That's what I want. I'm a perfectionist and that's what I want to see. That's what I want to produce. And what's your occupation? Accountant. You're an accountant? Yep. And how long have you been an accountant? About 15 years. 15 years? Yeah.
With a long career as an accountant and a real passion for professional filming, spending 150 grand on her kit wasn't that far-fetched.
I initially asked Diane Thompson to just tell me in detail exactly what happened.
I decided to go to the park to shoot some outtakes for a scenery shot. And I was approached by 3 men. Sorry, I'm still quite shaken up when I talk about it. Time.
With someone as passionate about high-definition images as Diane obviously was, you'd expect her descriptions to be spot on.
I separated each of the 3 offenders, if you like, and asked her to describe them.
Would you be kind enough to describe the first one to me, please? Okay. Number 1 had on black bottom and a black jumper, fair hair and Irish accent. Okay. And then if we were to concentrate on offender 2, how would you describe him? Same. He had on black bottoms and a black jumper. He fair-haired also. Yeah, about the same.
She quite clearly faltered at that point, and strangely enough, all 3 looked exactly the same and were all wearing exactly the same clothing.
And then if we can just focus on the last one, if that's okay. Yeah. Same her hair is very much the same looking as the others. It's interesting.
This certainly does sound interesting.
And then what happened next? My battery on my phone was dead, so I couldn't call the police right away.
Mugged and no mobile phone, Diane really was having a bad day.
I drove to the nearest police station, which was Boreham Wood, and it was closed, which I've never experienced before in my life.
And her bad luck didn't end there, as Diane wasn't able to find the boys in blue anywhere.
The account of her being approached by 3 males who were all dressed the same and all looked the same, and then her actions after the theft of racing around London for 5 hours in a car to report it to the police, but every police station that she visited was closed, just didn't ring true.
One hell of a day.
One hell of a story, more like. And unfortunately for Diane, the longer the call went on, the more her account sounded like fiction rather than fact.
When I relayed my concerns to Diane, it was quite interesting. She took on a persona of quite an uneducated, weak female who didn't understand.
Took everything, all of the equipment.
She might have struggled to find the police on the day, but fortunately for Diane, she was now speaking to the perfect person.
I understand these situations are quite distressing, and if I can give you any reassurance, I'm actually an ex-detective inspector, so I'm quite used to all these sort of issues, so I understand how difficult it must be. Thank you.
Well, it's not every day you have a former detective investigating your case. That can only be a good thing, can't it?
After my phone call with Diane, it was very important at that stage just to follow the normal insurance process. We had to meet Diane. I invited the insurer to come with me and take a statement from her and actually get her to sign that statement.
But when Tara arrived at the address Diane had given, the case took a shocking twist.
When I actually turned up at her home address, not only was she not there, but she hadn't been living at that address for probably about 3 months at that time. Unfortunately, the only way for her to get out of this situation was to go on the run.
This really is starting to sound like a Hollywood plot. And Tara thinks she may know exactly why Diane did a runner.
Her motivation for disappearing was very, very clear to me. She'd been detected. Diane Thompson was wanted by all 43 police forces and was literally on the run.
With the country's police force on the lookout for Diane, Tara and her team turned their attention to the stolen kit.
In the media industry, there's actually an intelligence database where you can place potentially stolen equipment to alert the industry that any equipment that comes into their hands with this particular serial number has been reported as stolen.
Thanks to this database, the plot thickened even further.
A few days later, a music producer in Italy contacted the Metropolitan Police and said, I have that camera in my hands as we speak.
So the kit that our pretend producer had flogged abroad was returned to the hire company. But finding Diane wasn't so easy. And she stayed missing for over a year, until the police had a remarkable stroke of luck.
The local policing team just happened to be passing one of her old addresses, and she just happened to be standing outside. I mean, it was literally that random, and she was arrested and conveyed straight to Holloway on a remand warrant pending trial.
She may have been a phony producer, but Diane still had one final plot twist up her sleeve.
When I found out that Diane had gone against her advice from her own counsel and decided to plead not guilty, I was utterly amazed.
It might have taken a year to track Diane down, but justice was served rather more swiftly.
And I was absolutely delighted when, within 9 minutes, the jury unanimously found Diane Thompson guilty.
Diane Thompson had claimed for over £150,000 worth of equipment, but instead of a career behind the camera, she got over 2 years behind bars.
I think it's fair to say Diane Thompson thought she was cleverer than she was, and that first phone call I had with her, without question, identified that she wasn't going to get away with this story, but because she was in so deep and was committed to her story at that time, she really had no choice but to follow it through or to admit the truth. And she was never going to admit the truth, and to this day she still doesn't admit the truth.
Still to come, there's a fiery case of whodunit.
What's quite clear is that he deliberately started the fire and left it to burn out.
And some sick puppies need looking at.
Either the Staffords were the unluckiest dog owners in the world, or else there was something not quite right about this claim.
With around 30 million cars on UK roads, it's unfortunately inevitable that accidents happen from time to time. But thankfully, not all accidents are severe. Colin Bushell of DWF knows as well as anyone that no matter how big or small a claim may be, they all need investigating, even if it involves parked vehicles.
The accident itself is quite straightforward. The claimant's coming along a minor road and looks to park up on the side of the road. The defendant is actually parked to his left and is looking to come onto the main road itself, and there's a very minor bump between the two cars.
A minor bump. That sounds like it should be a quick and easy claim to settle.
This was a straightforward case. LV were looking to make payments in respect to the vehicle damage, so there were no issues from their perspective.
Hello, can I speak to me?
Oh, hello. How are you doing? All right.
Ursula Jello and her team at LV dealt with the claim.
He told us about somebody who'd actually rung him earlier in the morning, letting him know that they knew that he'd had an accident and that actually he was entitled to some money.
Yeah, I've had a lady phone me today saying that obviously we know that you were stationary, the man's insurance has accepted liability for it and everything like that.
Right.
You're entitled to this money that's been set aside for you. Is that right, that you've got money put aside for saying that if anything happens to me?
To the claimant's credit, he actually said that he had a pre-existing condition.
I don't know about this lady, she was saying to me, have you got a bad back, sir? A bad neck? I said, look, I suffer from a bad back, and it just so happens that I've got a bad back at the moment, but it wasn't through that.
As an insurance company, this was great to hear a consumer telling us this, because that tells us actually the message is getting across that it's not okay to put a fraudulent whiplash claim through when actually there's nothing wrong with you. And so actually when we were hearing this from our third party, it was very, very refreshing.
And this upstanding man wasn't exactly shy about sharing his feelings about opportunistic claimants.
But all these people that are doing this in this country should be shot, to be honest. I know it sounds a little bit severe.
Having had the conversation with the third party, we then surprisingly had a claim through from a solicitor acting on behalf of him.
When investigators read through the document, it seemed to tell a different story altogether.
He has a neck injury, which is described as being severe, and a lower back injury, which again is severe.
Hang on. The last time they spoke to him, he was strongly against bogus claims.
I don't know about this lady, she was saying to me, have you got a bad back, sir? A bad neck?
He'd obviously been allured to the money that had been put aside for him.
Is that right, that you've got money put aside for saying that if anything happens to me?
As the insurers continued to read on, it went from surprising to shocking.
Very specifically within the medical report is reference to having suffered severe shock, and there was actually severe travel fear included within the medical report itself.
Travel fear? That's a new one on me. This chap really had done a complete U-turn.
When you look at and consider the evidence or the tone very much within the initial phone call, this gentleman doesn't come across as somebody who is in any way, shape or form suffering from shock. He comes across as a very calm, considered gentleman.
I've got a bad back, yeah, I've got a bad back, but I couldn't plead down to taking that knock in the car doing it.
So even though this claimant's injuries seem to have changed drastically, unbelievably, he still stuck to his story.
Both parties decided to run this to trial. If the claimant were to succeed, he's looking at the value of his claim to be around £3,500.
Armed with the evidence from the phone call, LV and DWF were more than happy to go to court.
The call recording is fairly unique. It's not often you're able to bring that type of evidence to a judge's attention.
Above all else, the phone call evidence proved one thing.
First and foremost, you told us you weren't injured. You're now telling us you are.
I'm all right. I feel all right. So I've got a bag back anyway, but it wasn't through that.
His story-changing antics didn't help him when the time came to stand in front of the judge.
So at trial, I think it's fair to say that the claimant came across very poorly and had quite a bad day out, to be honest with you. The extent of his cross-examination was lengthy, and he was taken to all of the inconsistencies, which were numerous. A good example would be the fact that the claimant forgot that he'd actually suffered, or allegedly suffered, a neck injury. That was something he had to try and explain away in the face of the court to the judge.
But unlike our claimant, the judge on this case only says what he means.
So the outcome of the hearing itself is really straightforward. The claimant failed on every aspect of his claim, so it was dismissed in full.
And although this claimant lost his case, he should count himself fortunate.
I'd suggest the claimant was actually quite lucky. The court dismissed his case, but took no further steps. On a different day, before a different judge, he may well have been found to have been fundamentally dishonest. Or worst case scenario, he could be held to be in contempt.
Think of that as the court equivalent of 3 points.
If we actually look at the original phone call itself, this gentleman acknowledges that the types of individuals who are going to pursue exaggerated claims are a scourge.
All these people that are doing this in this country should be shot, to be honest.
Apart from the should be shot bit, incredibly, this claimant has hit the nail on the head.
Like everyone's insurance policies go up through the ceiling.
And that is exactly why this issue has to be investigated. Those making spurious, invalid, exaggerated claims are the root cause of this increased premium.
Pets can be a great addition to the home. In fact, it's estimated that 12 million UK households have them. And the most popular pet by a long way is, you've guessed it, dogs, with 8.5 million nationwide. And for some homes, one dog just isn't enough, as John Beadle discovered when RSA received a call from a canine-loving couple.
The Staffords took out 3 policies with us. The first policy was for a dog called Buster.
Unfortunately, illness and injury affect most pets at some point, and sadly, Buster was no different.
Buster, the dog, sadly broke his leg, so we funded the treatment for his broken leg, which then developed into cancer, and that ultimately led to him having to have his leg amputated, and then very sadly, ultimately had to be put to sleep.
Losing a pet can be an extremely upsetting experience, but fortunately, the Stafford family were covered.
The thing with pet insurance is, and I'm a dog owner, is you hope you never have to use your pet insurance, but sadly sometimes you do.
Following Buster's passing, Mr. and Mrs. Stafford did what many dog lovers would do. They bought another canine companion.
They subsequently took out another policy for a dog called Angel, and then Angel also developed a form of cancer.
Visits to the vets aren't cheap, and so the Stafford family quickly racked up thousands of pounds worth of vet bills.
And of course, all these claims we were paying in good faith because they were all supported by documentation from the vets and invoices.
With their recent upsetting losses in mind, the Stafford family decided to cheer themselves up with a third dog, Winston.
Winston then developed cancer.
3 dogs with cancer. This is starting to sound like Groundhog Day.
We were entitled to think that either the Staffords were the unluckiest dog owners in the world, with all 3 of their poor animals having developed cancer, or else there was something not quite right about this claim.
And reading Mr. and Mrs. Stafford's paperwork did little to settle the investigators' concerns.
Our fraud investigator, when they began to look at this case, and when you looked at the invoices and the supporting documentation, they didn't really stack up. They didn't look as professional as they perhaps should have done.
With concerns about Mr. and Mrs. Stafford's numerous pet insurance claims, RSA checked the authenticity of the documents.
And of course, when we went and visited the vets, they said they'd never created any of this documentation, all the stamps and the signatures used were all fraudulent.
Knowing that the documents were dodgy, RSA passed the case on to the City of London Police's Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department. After investigating the case, IFED officers arrested Mr. and Mrs. Stafford and charged them with conspiracy to commit fraud by false representation. And when the case got to court, the judge was less than impressed with the couple's shaggy dog story.
We were pleased with the sentence handed down to the Staffords. They didn't go to prison, but they got a substantial suspended prison sentence, plus a community service order.
The couple were also ordered to repay every penny of the $8,000 they'd fraudulently received.
They probably thought it was easy, that insurers don't have any controls around this, and they were probably motivated by greed. So my message to the people is, we're not stupid, and you will get caught.
So all three of Mr. and Mrs. Stafford's pet insurance claims were bogus. But whatever happened to their dogs?
Angel and Winston didn't exist at all.
So if Angel and Winston were phantom pooches, what about Buster?
There is a kind of nice postscript to this story, because when we unravelled this series of claims as a fraud, we actually saw Buster, who was alive and well, and I can assure you he had all 4 legs still on him.
The UK's fire and rescue services attend over 200,000 fires every year. But as Tom Gardiner from Aviva knows only too well, some fire-related insurance claims are less smoky and more hokey, particularly when the police are giving you the heads up on a suspicious claim.
Mr. Lee made a claim for fire damage to his Ford Transit van, which was found burnt out in a car park whilst it was unattended.
Good morning, Aviva Direct.
Hello, we've had a fire in one of our vehicles that's insured with yourself.
Do you have the fire brigade there at all?
Yeah, they've put it out.
Right from the start, doubts were raised about Mr. Lee's version of events.
Very quickly we had a number of concerns about the claim. The fire appeared to have been deliberately started in the passenger seat, but the vehicle was found locked, and he also had burns to his hands.
It certainly sounds suspicious, but Mr. Lee had an explanation.
Because basically there was a chemical spillage in the back of the van. Because we do landscape gardening, it can actually cause quite heavy burns.
The police clearly thought the burns to Mr. Lee's hands meant that he had something to do with the fire himself. He sought to explain that as being as a result of handling weed killer.
It wasn't looking good for Mr. Lee, but then Aviva discovered something that added even more fuel to the fire.
The decisive piece of evidence and the nail in the coffin was CCTV coverage at the car park, which Mr. Lee had overlooked, but which actually showed him driving the vehicle on fire into the car park. He later tried to explain that as being fog or mist, but which the police were able to rule out and said that the weather was clear.
With alarm bells well and truly ringing, Aviva were confident they now knew the facts.
I think what's quite clear is that Mr. Lee deliberately started the fire in the vehicle himself, drove it to the car park, and locked it and left it to burn out.
Realising his claim was up in smoke, Mr. Lee started having second thoughts.
8 days after he'd reported the incident, Mr. Lee telephoned Aviva wanting to withdraw the claim.
I've had a lot of hassle with the police. The police arrested me for insurance fraud.
Insurance fraud?
Yeah. If there's no claim, then you haven't committed insurance fraud, so I might as well take the vehicle back, sell the pieces, and get the money back.
Unfortunately, what he didn't realise was withdrawing a claim wouldn't take away the crime.
Faced with the evidence against him in court, Mr. Lee took a turn for the worse.
At the trial, during evidence, when presented with the CCTV images, he suddenly alleged chest pains, And as a result, the trial was adjourned while an ambulance attended.
Thankfully, the chest pains didn't last, and it wasn't long before the trial resumed.
Mr. Lee finally received a suspended sentence of 16 weeks.
So, anyone thinking they can just walk away from this type of fraudulent claim is risking more than just burnt fingers.
I think the lesson is that submitting fraudulent claims isn't the solution, because you will get caught, you will get prosecuted. Mr. Lee will find it very difficult to access financial products in the future, and instead of being a lot better off, he's a lot worse off.
If you think that man's attempt to cash in was extreme, then buckle up. Because outside the British Isles, there are people whose attempts to cash in on insurance payouts go from ridiculously shocking to just plain stupid. Let's file that one under ridiculous, shall we? And the risks some people are willing to go to can be frightening. Even your mate is leaving you alone on that one. Taxi! Getting caught faking a personal injury claim can be pretty serious, but to some, it's worth the risk. But not worth making an effort, though, I see. Here's a chap who seems happy to show you how it's done. That'll leave a mark. Maybe next time this young man will think twice before he throws himself in front of a moving car. That looks like more of a snooze than a bruise on your bike. Yep, when it comes down to it, to some people it doesn't matter if it's on a slow street or a hurtling highway. Forget the payout, you're lucky to leave this scam with your life. Ludicrous claims happen all over the world, but if that isn't scary enough, some people are taking their chances and falling in front of moving cars here in the UK too, as this unlucky learner driver found out. Yep, this looks like a perfect road to practice the old three-point turn.
Yeah, as you came round, you should have steered to your right. What's he do?
That's nice of him.
Okay, carry on.
Oh, he's back. Maybe he's going to give the windscreen a clean. Comfortable down there, are you? I want to see that again. Put it in reverse, would you? Here he comes. Oh, there you go. Thankfully, this man walked away and didn't submit an insurance claim.
Just get out of it. Just get out of it. Pull forward.